I studied I studied Viking-related things. Primarily, I studied medieval Iceland and Anglo-Saxon England.
I think the old languages thing is like a fascinating window into like the history of this area and so on. There were so many different like peoples and like kind of kingdoms on the go, and there were at least, and Ross will probably be able to back me up on this one. There were 5 different languages spoken in northern Britain, north of the Wall, in the late ancient and early medieval period, and just how those like kind of echoes and the shadows of that are left on the landscape and like the place names.
Yeah.
Place names for us are a huge clue into getting in
Yeah.
to who lived there, what community dominated, and then you can use that to almost map like the transhumance, how the people moved across the landscape of northern Britain as it became Scotland and kind of pushed some of these communities out. And for me, it's about the story of these old kingdoms, and it is like a kind of real life on our doorstep Game of Thrones. It's happened here, and we've got the kind of remains of it round about us. We just, to some extent, the mainstream don't know they're there. Yeah.
Well,
And Ross knows a lot of Anglo-Saxon sites down in the borders, like Yevering Bell. That's down there, isn't it, Ross?
Yeah, that's down there. And beside that, there's a huge hill fort called Woden Law. It's not too far away. So they're probably accessible in the same day, I'd have thought. And the camps at, I want to say Chew Green, the Roman camps at Chew Green, up where the military have their base.
There's a military firing range. I don't know if
Yeah.
Chew Green's on it or if it's next to it. But
Yeah, it's on it. It is on it.
That
You have,
sounds
to
like,
check,
yeah.
you have to check that you're okay.
and we lost half the team on the second trip.
Like, if I've learned anything from 2020 so far, it's that everything's going to be fine. We should just go forward with confidence.
Well,
Yeah, so that's down
cool.
there.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. Woden Law is probably your most impressive hill fort in terms of size and location. Apart from up at Benakee, I suppose, but that's...
You know loads of stuff down the Borders way though, and the Borders is just like stuffed with things. And when we went to Eden's Hall Broch, right, and we did our trip, what surprised me was that was so close, well, except for James, that was so close to Edinburgh. You know, it was still technically in the Borders, wasn't it? So the Borders, like...
Yeah, but like, so you see, like, all the decent stuff, well, not so much all the decent stuff, all the other stuff is much further south. Like, I'd never been to Eden's Hall Broch because it was so far away from everything else and from the main roads. So that's kind of why I wanted to go there, and it was between where I was and where you guys were, so more so for James, even though Derek got there first.
A ferry and, you know, like a 4-hour car trip or something daft. I had a parcel to post and I ended up posting it in Duns. And then
James was closer than everyone.
I got that was the latest.
Yes, he did well. What I'm interested in as part of this is like the Roman stuff that's kind of going on in this period too. I know for all of us that's got a crossover with that kind of classics thing. I would say definitely since I've done my classics degree and since I've been teaching early medieval period, early medieval is amazing and it's totally sucked me in. Definitely in the last 2 or 3 years, I'm like, I just want to know more about it. But the Roman stuff still appeals to me. And I say like following the track of Deer Street as it comes up through Lothian and the Borders, gets to the kind of Edinburgh way and then ends up in kind of Cramond Fort. Like following Deer Street, like through the Lammermuir Hills, even something like that, because you can still see the track of it, and it's huge. Like Sutra Isle is just south of Edinburgh, and there you've got like a medieval hospital site that was visited by King Edward II when he came to fight at Bannockburn, and yet he followed the Roman road into Scotland, where generations of armies have made their way along that same track. So like things like that, the stories that would be behind that we could tell, and you could also go and see a site that's really probably quite unknown by the kind of mainstream, and we can still, you know, get some really cool footage, and it's not that far from Edinburgh. I think it'd be good if we could like identify a few sites between Glasgow and the Edinburgh Way that we can kind of come together, and we all don't have like huge trips to get to and so on. I don't mind driving; it's part and parcel of living in Argyll, so it's just what you got to do. But for you guys, I appreciate like you don't want to spend hours and hours in a car getting somewhere all the time. So if we do identify something in that kind of like ellipse across the centre of Scotland, if we could pick something out and go and see, like you suggest, for that weekend or two, maybe before October or in October.
I think for me, it was the idea that, as you say, they're kind of off the beaten track and they're not, you know, like we're not going up to Edinburgh Castle and you know where everybody knows it, or if it is slightly more well known, then it's kind of looking at the you know, maybe the things that not are less well known, but are the kind of mysterious elements of it. Do you know? I always feel with things like medieval period and Roman Britain to a certain extent as well, there's that kind of shroud of darkness of what actually happened, how much do we know, and that's always got a slightly romantic element for me, I think. The literary bit is probably where I can kind of come into it a little bit too, in the sense that the witches thing that I was wanting to kind of look at has got the historic elements to it, you know, the kind of witchcraft and Stone Age, you know, it's a sort of Stonehenge almost kind of thing, but then there's the kind of witch hysteria, the kind of early modern bit. You've got the you know, witch trials and because it was kind of
people love hearing those kind of stories, don't they?
Yeah, and because you're kind of used to the Salem stuff, you maybe don't the Scottish element of it as well. And when you showed me the kind of map of all the Rathwell witches, you're sort of blown away by how actually your own community ousted people and did lots of really bad things quite legally to them. So I want to go and look at you know, maybe some of the literary stuff as well.
No, that definitely dovetails with my stuff, because like essentially my background is linguistics, and I kind of got into more sociolinguistics and then study of monstrosity. So it was mostly looking at literary sources from the periods rather than necessarily delving into archaeology or history. So I've got some history, especially early medieval Iceland. If we were doing early medieval Iceland, I could point you to all sorts of interesting fields. But yeah, no. So yeah, I've touched on things like that. So that, like, I don't know a lot about witchcraft in Scotland, but like witchcraft and monstrosity and othering and how difference is kind of viewed, and I have spent a lot of time looking at literary sources from Anglo-Saxon and Iceland and other kind of periods of medieval England, particularly, looking at witches and monsters and devils, oh my. So I would be also very interested in seeing that kind of stuff and looking through that.
But we've got a chance here to like delve into that and kind of like open up these stories. And like James was saying, it's not like, it doesn't need to be Hollywood. It doesn't need to be these huge, massive, famous sites, perhaps like the Pantheon in Rome or something. But we've got these really cool individual stories just all around about us. Just need to go and look for them. It's there, and you don't need to spend thousands of pounds to go and see them. So
yeah. I think for me, it's very much this is where history is kind of, it's at the forefront of history, this stuff. It's not the things like Hitler that you know everything about, or World War II. It's things that can still be discovered. I don't know if you saw on the BBC News down in Peebles. It was only in the news in the past couple of weeks, but back in June, there was a discovery, metal detectorist out with his metal detector, and he came across what he wasn't sure it was beeped. He dug down 1.5 meters, and he's found another example of a full, they think it's a Bronze Age saddle. It's in peat, so it's been perfectly preserved. So 3,500 years old, they're thinking roughly, and that's just outside Peebles, where where they think they found a Roman fortlet as well. This all came to light. Remember a couple of years back when we had the massive drought in the summer, and people were putting up all their drones, and all of these new archaeological sites were coming to light because of the markings in the ground are revealed. So they found a Roman fort up there now, just outside Peebles towards Stovall. And this guy's obviously been out thinking, let's see if we can find anything in this, because they've been trying to keep it quiet where it is. There's been no documentation exactly what field it is, but Yeah, someone's found it. So, and that's what I like about this sort of stuff. In terms of witches, like I haven't ever taught anything about witches, but I was up at this was, I think it was last. It was when I was on my way back from. Remember we went up to see all the stones, Derek?
Yeah, up in Angus, we went to see the picture.
Yeah. And when I was on my way back, I passed. It was Dunning, just up near Perth. There was a picture symbol stone there. But once I came out of the church and like drove further along the road, just in the middle of nowhere, there's a monument to witches. It's called Maggie Wall Witch Monument. I don't know if you've heard of it. And it's basically just a cross at the side of the road, staircase up to it. And they don't actually know who this person was. They have kind of like found who the local landowner was at the time. They've got kind of evidence of witch trials going on around about the area. The names of the witches that were involved, but Maggie Wall doesn't appear. So this seems to be a much later monument set up to celebrate witches rather than to vilify them, which is it's almost like come full circle.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know.
Because that's the fun thing, of course, is how much. Yeah, what do people think about witchcraft before Christianity got in and started?
Well, do you know, one of the interesting things that is kind of what I was thinking about is, in the video, yet to be released, soon to be released. I keep kind of filming snippets. I filmed not told Jen this, but I kind of filmed the mist out the window of my car today to do like kind of Evil Dead style, like kind of mist coming at you, kind of thing. Which interesting thing about that local witches is in Scotland anyway. It's kind of more divorced from the church than the American stuff was. So like. Like Salem, Massachusetts, you're inextricably linking the witch trials with the kind of, what you call them, kind of like Quakers type kind of settlements, where they had their kind of holy book, but also their almost like their demonology as well that went with that. But in Scotland, it was the lairds as well as the ministers, as well as basically your kind of community leaders, as well as Edinburgh's Privy Council. So like it kind of got separated a little bit from, the church minister being, or the religious kind of element being the sort of prosecution. Which
you're saying like they're all having a go pretty much, so they would identify someone and like you're gonna burn, that kind of thing. Yeah
basically. So if you were a fringe kind of person in the community, you were much more likely to get targeted by the community, and I suppose in a way as well that it's that kind of what attracts me to it anyways. It's the fear of the outsider and the fear of the unknown, as much as the kind of human thing of I like that man's sheep. I think I would have them for myself. Here's a witch.
It was pushed much more in Scotland by James, wasn't it?
King James, yeah.
So it was, not James. So it kind of came down that secular pressure down to the nobles and through into the communities. But it is the fear of the unknown, because even if you look back to like Cersei, it's fear of the unknown in terms of she was vilified because she wasn't a powerful god. She didn't have the powers of the gods, the normal gods, but she used magic. She used pharmaca to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's almost the fear that if potions are being made, humans can technically do that. Yep. But like, I read something on her that even that rumor probably built up from the fact that she was a woman alone. And that fear of strong women in society, not married, living on their own, really kind of like was terrifying for a lot of the kind of the community, especially the secular leaders of the community. that goes back to your kind of thing about like them being unmarried. So if they're unmarried, it's very strange by a certain age, and so they must be married to the devil. This sort of kind of like ridiculous attitude. There's a. I kind of always knew it as down in Selkirk. There was a walk we always went every common riding that we had down in the Borders. Happened in June, and the school would take us up the Three Brethren, which was at the edges of the community. So it was where the lands of Selkirk ended and the lands of another town started. And on that periphery, halfway up that hill, there was a gravestone, just a single gravestone on the hillside. It was Tibby Shields' grave. But like as I was growing up, I always knew that as that's the witch's grave. Now, she wasn't a witch. She was a woman who had, I think it was in the 1800s, she had gone insane. Was extremely poor, had gone insane, and had been acting up in one of the churchyards, and had got into a bit of trouble with it, and then committed suicide because of the way she was treated by the townsfolk. But because she committed suicide, at the time that was seen as crime, so she was put onto the edges of everyone else. But then suddenly that story has morphed into, oh, she was a witch because she was different, and because she's out there, there must be another reason for her being out there. And and that's what's growing up. Like that's what children are told.
So those are the kind of sites definitely that I'd love to like cover with this kind of thing. Is like those kind of stories that come out. It's not like a huge site like you say like Edinburgh Castle and so on, but that's a fascinating story. And like you know that because you're a local of Selkirk.
Yeah.
I've read books like Alistair Moffat, who's from the Borders too, does a lot of books on Scottish history, and he reels out these kind of like Borders legends and Borders stories and so on. But it's great to hear that you grew up with that, and that's the kind of knowledge that doesn't really pop up in a book, is it? It's the kind of story that inhabitants know and grew up with. The folklore.
Tiny little stone, like in the middle of nowhere.
And it wouldn't mean anything to like some tourist who came, be like, oh, stone. But like the story, which is really, really interesting, really cool.
I kind of see this website as maybe being something for, like, if people arrive in, say, like a small town like that, and they're looking for something to do, this could give them the sort of, there are things around here you could go and see. If you want to go walk up hill somewhere, if you want to go into this forest, you'll find this. And it will interest some people, I think. It's interesting me. So
we're already getting a ton of hits on it. Like I've used Ross as our Instagram model. And
oh my god! Have you? I've not
how
seen
about you're feeling pressure to lose weight here, Ross?
Well, it was pretty good. It was standing on top of a kind of what was it, Eden's Broch, with his kind of feet or going on top of a cairn or something like that, and
looking heroic.
Well, you're going to get in so much trouble from Historic Scotland, aren't we? They're going to get off our monument.
But yeah, the Instagram thing seems to sort of work because you just bang out the link and stuff, and you tag it in the right way, and like lots of different sort of Scottish history type stuff are now beginning to kind of follow us as well. So
that's good.
like it's a funny way that the whole thing works, in terms of it's a bit like Twitter, Instagram. I hadn't totally appreciated, and you hashtag things and it makes it searchable, and you can put the link on it and whatever, and you suddenly get kind of traction. So
I think it's a really good time to do some of this with people doing a lot of kind of staycations this year because of everything that's happened, and those who do, I presume it's going to kind of open the horizons a bit to that there is stuff to do in Northern Britain at home if you want to do so, and if we give them stuff to do, as Ross says, when they're there, then it's more likely people are going to engage with us and kind of buy into the site, which is good.
Sounds good. So next steps is you guys want to think about somewhere that might combine some of these kind of things, and we'll do like a road trip. Darkins is hopefully by that stage as well. In a couple of weeks, the kind of feeling of Scottish lockdown changes a little bit as well, and travelling with people is not necessarily as bad a thing. And
hopefully. I see that some Historic Scotland sites are starting to open as of this week. So I know you have to make booked visits and so on, but if we do find ourselves going to, pay and enter sites rather than like sites we can like discover on a hillside somewhere, then they are an option now, which is good.
Yeah.
I am interested in, I don't know about you guys, but I'm quite interested in the north bank of the Forth, kind of between just west of Stirling down as far as maybe the Forth Bridge. I think there's some interesting stuff. That used to be the tribe of the Marnow Gododin used to live there. Stirling used to be called Guidi, and it was within their domain, and their capital is Clackmannan, means the stone of the Marnow tribe. There are lots of early medieval sites that way. There's also a few medieval castles we can get into, like Clackmannan Tower. We can go and see the Marnow stone. It's in the town centre in Clackmannan as well. It's ancient artefact and relic. And there are lots of places like there's Torwood Broch, I think, is not too far away from Bannockburn itself. And there's a castle in the Torwood Forest as well. We can go and see that. But just in that short or small area, there seems like there's quite a few little sites we can go and get about. It's quite interesting. It's not too far from all of us. We can kind of coalesce.
Mere descent on the town. Wooden swords.
Just on your you were saying you're quite interested in Deer Street. We could possibly do that at some point as well. There's a Tony Robinson program on it. I don't know if you've seen it. On Deer Street itself, he walks Deer Street and
I have not seen that one. No, that would be great.
Some pieces. It's on Channel 4, 4 on demand. I'll send you the link. But there's a place that I really want to visit. It's close to Jedburgh. It's called Fat Lips Castle.
Right? I meant it just for the name. Let's go.
It's an early medieval tower,
but
the reason I want to visit is because you get the keys from the town garage.
Nice.
So you walk to the town garage, they give you the keys, you give them a £5 deposit, and you go up to this tower yourself, open the door and go in and have a look.
Hang on a second. You're telling me that the process here is you go into the garage and you say, I'd like the Fat Lips Castle keys, please.
Yes. But it gives you amazing views of all the Roman sort of kind of stuff around there and all the hill forts and things because it's really high up. So that's maybe worth doing at some point with all the Deer Street stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds totally pimp. I'm up for that. That sounds great. We get 2 weeks off in October. I don't know.
We do too.
So you get 2 weeks off.
We get one.
Loser.
You get one. Oh, what a shame. Well, that means
we
that
only need a day, though, don't we? We only need a day or two, don't we? So
yeah, exactly.
I'm sure I'll be willing to take some sick days by that point. Just don't film me. Don't film me.
No,
Just edit that part out.
No, Ross is not going to do that. But that could be quite a good gore. Darkins has got the wireless mics, so we're sorted for rigging Darkins up. I have
any of you guys up? Anyone who wants to go?
What was that?
Anyone who wants to go can get rigged up.
Yeah.
So your camera work on the WhatsApp, you said, were you kind of presenting to the camera?
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of try and get my head around using my cameras a little bit, and sort of try and do that. I probably need a zoom lens. I've got zoom lenses for my other cameras which I could use, but it's just trying to kind of work on photography skills for video, which I've not.
I think we've got between us, we've got some exciting kit to use. And the fact we've also got quite a few bodies if we all kind of come together as well. It's not as if one person's trying to set up a tripod and time it and run off to get in the shot and do it. We can all work together to really produce something that could be quite good. Imagine having multi-angle shots of some of us doing something. I think that'd be really, really cool. The footage we could produce, I think, as part of the project would be right.
I think the footage we could produce would be pretty awesome because if we've got a couple of cameras, you can have the walking shot, you can, as well as the kind of close-ups and all of that kind of stuff at the same time. I think we're.
Al, can you speak early English?
Theoretically-ish.
Yes.
You have to bear in mind I'm super rusty though.
I love it when they do that on like kind of the history docs, and they do like an actor talking in like Gaelic or whatever language they're doing, or Latin or something, and they're having that overlaying like the camera angle, like exploring the site, or someone doing something on scene. I think it sounds so atmospheric and amazing. If we were to visit like an Anglo-Saxon site and you were to be able to like recite a bit of Beowulf or a piece like the Godothin, even or Godothin, but I imagine that would be like.
etc. Yeah, opening lanes Beowulf.
Amazing.
Well, fun phrase for the day then, Enta Yewiork, which is the phrase that's quite often used in Anglo-Saxon to talk about what generally is assumed to be Roman ruins. It means the works of giants, the construction of giants. Yeah.
Yes. I like this.
Yeah.
I read a book not long ago called The Land of Giants. It was about the ancient monuments of Britain. So putting two and two together, that's probably
Totally.
That would be an amazing insight for us. That would be really, really cool. Yeah, because I know that, like for instance, Ross has been talking about Roman forts a lot tonight. A few of the Roman forts down in the Borders ways were reused by Dark Age chieftains. Like Bard Oswald on the Hadrian's Wall, potentially where St. Patrick was born. It was occupied by a Dark Age chief. We know the Irish came up the valley on a slave raid, and they took St. Patrick when he was a kid and raised him over in Ireland. We've also got like Birmingham, which is High Rochester, and we've got forts down near towards kind of Carlisle way as well, Netherby, which are reused as these kind of Dark Age like strongholds. So the idea of them like finding these forts and going, holy crap, we can't build anything like this, so we're just going to stay here. Imagine this Dark Age warhorse just riding out the gates on their steeds and stuff to go off and raid, steal cattle from the guys next door. It's just so atmospheric. It's amazing.
We're still like using roads or roadways that the Romans laid down, right, to this day. Like the infrastructure that the Romans provided absolutely was used by people afterwards, and they were left asking, how did they build this stuff? What is this? Who did this?
Yeah, because if you drive down, there's a road in the Borders called the A68 that it goes straight down to Hadrian's Wall. But if you drive down it, it's awful. I don't mind it, but most people don't. James, you would die in it because there is no corners, but it's over horrific hills. So you are basically just snaking up and down all the way, and it's almost like you're on a roller coaster. You come to the summit of a hill and you think the road disappears, and then it suddenly just like plummets right back down again. It's a Roman road. It's Deer Street.
That's when you tried to back the minibus up and blew the clutch out on.
Oh, that was the other side of Hadrian's Wall. Yes.
That sounds good. Good. So, we kind of look at calendars later on. Then once I get my kind of dates, and I'll look up your holiday dates and see what we can do. I will finish off my witches video and stick it on and see what you guys make of it, and then take constructive criticism to the face. Compare that against what Derek's been producing, and
couple of quick thoughts. Just when you were talking about Apuleius, the one that popped into my head was, and it may not be super relevant, but Petronius of Satyricon. There's the werewolf bit. There's the story. I think it's the dinner party is the only really surviving extant chapter, but there's the story about one of the guests is saying they saw, or they heard a story about seeing somebody like slipping off behind some gravestones out on the Appian Way, and they took their clothes off and they peed in a circle around their clothes and turned into a wolf, which is more werewolfy than witchcrafty, but
that's very cool. I think we need to get Ross that out.
Magic.
It's also got peeing and stuff and metamorphosing.
As well, it's something. There's actually like that 12th century French Marie de France, her lays. There's a story called Bisclavaret, which has a very similar construction, except it's Bisclavaret is kind of set up. He has witchcraft performed upon him. His clothes are stolen, and he transforms into a wolf, and he earns his humanity back by becoming the king's dog and by being a good dog, he eventually gets to be a human being again. And like it's that thing of transgression, right? It's transgression that's at the root of this, or perceived transgression against what society wants you to think is normal, which is why it's interesting particularly when it comes to things like witchcraft and magic, because there are times where witchcraft isn't necessarily seen as bad inherently, like when you have pagan religion, when you have druids and things, when you have magic which is associated with religion, with works of the gods, that's not necessarily bad. It's, as you were saying earlier, like witchcraft or magic which lies out with godly powers or explainable powers. But yeah, it's the perceived transgression, like of removing the clothes, removing the civilizing kind of layer, and revealing the beast within.
Yeah, so I can imagine how this is going to go. My biggest problem just now is actually convincingly talking to a camera. Like, I find that so hard. When it's something that you're trying to do semi-well, it's really, really hard to do.
It's a skill. It's something you gotta learn and develop over time.
I mean, you don't need to. Well, when you do talk to the camera, that doesn't need to be all they see. You know what I mean? So like you could talk to the camera at the site. So what you're talking about is behind you. So like when I watch TV and like there's a presenter on TV, I'm also looking at what's around them.
Yeah.
Usually to the detriment of paying attention to what they're saying. But I mean, like, you can have that as a background, or you could run a picture or something in front of you. You just have the audio of what you're saying. So the viewer's like taking something in, and you're narrating what they see rather than just looking at the talking head. So it doesn't need to be that. But I'd say watching a video anyway, usually having a person like that I can see in front of me is the most engaging thing. But it doesn't need to be that all the time. So maybe like you can start with you, and then you flip off to like a scene of the stone, or we can have some pictures of the witches, or if you're going to talk about Cersei, then we've got some imagery of Cersei.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And short, snappy cuts and stuff of fun things. So yeah, it's going to be good fun.
Kind of think of it like a PowerPoint presentation in that sort of way. That like you become the words in the presentation, but you've also got images, diagrams, all that sort of stuff to go along with it.
Yeah, was it Steph got me into doing all the movie on the video stuff and so on, and she said that you want to hold a shot of an image or a still on the Mac. They've got that Ken Burns effect where it makes the picture move slightly across the screen.
Yeah.
Watching a video, if you've got some motion, even if it's a still, it seems to be more engaging for it to be on screen for a little bit longer. But your shelf life is round about 5 or 6 seconds for each. Like if you're going to use stills, 5 or 6 seconds is about it, and you cut to the next one, and you cut to the next one, and so on. You get more time if it's just your talking head, but you still want to have something that kind of like shakes it up, unless you're going to have like an interesting background going on. If you know what I mean.
Sounds good. So I think I'm going to try and get Jen to let me out probably tomorrow, Friday.
Are you going to go for an atmospherically like horsing it down day? Just destruction and apocalypse?
Yeah, that's why I was like trying to take pictures of it, and on the way past this morning when it was like completely shrouded in mist, I was like, this would have been a great time to go and get into the woods with my camera. So yeah, give it a shot, and we'll put it out to the critics of you guys.
I'm jazzed to see it. It'll be really good. This is a bit unrelated to the witch thing, but I came across a video from some bloke on YouTube. I think I sent it to you, James. The guy went to a place called Dunino Den in Fife. Have you guys heard of that? No, it has.
Yeah, there's like
what I saw
Fife.
From like the Undiscovered Scotland's, it has a site on it as well. It's like a carved face on a kind of sandstone rock. It looks a bit like one of the heartwood trees. Oh. Yeah, it looks like one of the heartwood trees in Game of Thrones, right? So they've carved this face of an old man on the rock on the side, but the whole thing is like this kind of bowl-shaped dell with kind of 1 or 2 story high cliff all the way around it, and there's a well in the middle, and there's steps they've carved into the cliffside more than 1,000 years ago that leads up to a little plateau at the back of the site where they have one of those footprints like at Dunad, where the king puts his foot in the stone to be crowned. So this would have been with the Pictish kingdom of Fib or Fife. This is where the king got the job done. So it's like a kind of a ceremonial site, a kind of site of change, a site of kind of a bit of magic from the other world as well. So you've got this kind of holy spring, but you've also got the royal inauguration site behind you. You've got your ancients watching. Someone's carved a Celtic triskele on the wall next to the staircase as well. It's about this wide, this high. It's huge. The site, and it's all like wooded, so it's quite overgrown and like shadowy when you're in there as well. It's like a phenomenal place to visit. And Fife's a wee bit out of the way, I guess, to get to and stuff, but that would be amazing. See if we were there at night time in a place like that. That would be insane.